This is TJ with Tech Made Easy. Welcome to the channel. My channel is all about making things affordable, practical, and easy. And what we're going to talk about today is ZimaOS and CasaOS. And what is the difference? Now, both of them are made by the same company. ZimaOS is really made for their Zima boards, and they've used CasaOS to facilitate Docker apps in there. And of course, then you have a standalone Casa application that you can run on any Debian distribution, whether it's a desktop or a server. Now, so obviously, ZimaOS is a one-stop solution where you install that on any PC that you want. It includes the operating system and the ZimaOS Docker application. So, but what is different about them? What's lacking? What does ZimaOS have that CasaOS doesn't have? And what's the future of ZimaOS? Recently, I just messaged them about 6 questions I had for ZimaOS because I'm really interested in this platform because they have made it so easy to set up a server with ZimaOS and CasaOS, how so easy to install Docker apps. That I had questions for them, like, are they going to have multiple SMB username and passwords that you can attach to shares? And 5 other questions that I'll answer when I'm talking about the 2 products. So I'm just really excited about CasaOS and ZimaOS, and obviously it's been around for a while, and I've known about it for a while, but I never tried it out. Once I tried it out, I was hooked. So so we're going to go over what the future of ZimaOS is as well when it comes to RAID and some other questions. So let's get started. Okay, so I've got ZimaOS on the left, and I got CasaOS on the right. Now, CasaOS, when you first install it, it doesn't have these apps sitting here. It's only got files and App Store. Now, on the left, this is a fresh install of ZimaOS, and so it has the App Store, has files, but it also has a VM, which is for a Zima virtual machine. Then it has this PeerDrop. PeerDrop is for sharing files. In fact, they have a way of you install an app on Windows and Mac, and I'm not sure if it's only if you're like on a laptop or something outside the office. I don't know if you can still do this on a phone. I haven't played around with this, but I know when you go into here, you click on here and it'll have this Mac or Windows client that you need to download and install to get it to work. But like I said, I haven't played with it, so that's one of the differences between CasaOS and ZimaOS, is it comes with that peer sharing program, and CasaOS does not come with this Zima VM, and I'll explain why that is here in a minute. But let's look at settings. So the settings is a little bit different than the other. In fact, for some reason in CasaOS they give you these toggles, and I have not seen these toggles available in here that you can turn some of these features off. But at any rate, I mean, it's not that much. They give you a little network. They give you a little network button here, probably just to manage your networking from here. So the setup is a little bit different because, and this is the big difference between CasaOS and ZimaOS. I should start there first. CasaOS you can install on any Debian-based distro, whether it's a desktop version or a server version. And I'm not sure about the other flavors of Linux. ZimaOS, you install that on bare metal. If you don't have any operating system, ZimaOS includes the operating system and the Casa interface. And so they have made them just look a little bit different as far as the backgrounds go, to kind of tell the difference. So they kind of have this darker background for ZimaOS, and then they have these mountain scenes for CasaOS. And I haven't really looked to see if you can change the background of ZimaOS or not, but those are just a couple of differences there. I'm going to try and hurry and get through these differences because there's some things that you got to really know that are important to know for the future of ZimaOS. And just so you know, I asked them 6 questions, and one of the answers is they're going to be concentrating on ZimaOS more heavily than CasaOS. Now, that doesn't mean that CasaOS, I'm assuming that CasaOS will exist, but some of the features that I'm going to be talking about in ZimaOS
probably may not be in CasaOS, but CasaOS is going to be a great standalone. If you just want an app server, then CasaOS is a great app server. Where ZimaOS is really made, I'm going to tell you right now, if they just get a few things working on ZimaOS, this is the easiest server interface that a home user can actually use and install. If they aren't into all the bells and whistles that so many people are into sometimes with the server, they just want something simple to run Plex, Jellyfin, maybe access their files from anywhere, ZimaOS is such an easy interface to use. So let's talk a little bit more about the differences. So now the differences, just so you know, the reason why these two exist, and hopefully they're going to keep CasaOS going, is that CasaOS is really meant to be a Docker app server. It's not, I don't think it's really meant to do share, so on and so forth, because you could install on any operating system, any Debian operating system that you want. So with that in mind, you can take care of all the other things that you want to take care of. It's like having RAIDs and setting up your Samba shares. Where ZimaOS is really meant to be an all-in-one solution that you put on bare metal. That includes the operating system and the Docker Casa interface. So with that in mind, let's just go ahead and let's go over more of the differences between the two operating systems. When it comes to virtual machines, you can run a virtual machine using CasaOS, but in the App Store here, if you go down the bottom, and both of them have this app, this virtual machine manager. The problem is with CasaOS, it requires you to install some other like Virt Manager and QEM, and a lot of people coming from Windows aren't going to know how to do that. Where this Virt Manager in CasaOS is already pre-installed and ready to go. And in fact, I've actually got Zorn-OS running in a. So this Zima virtual machine, I actually have it running in this browser right here using that, and I've got Zorn-OS running out of a VM right here that's using that VM to run. So it's actually pretty slick. It's all ready to go. You just set it up and go install like any VM. In fact, if I go into here and I don't have it Zorn-OS installed on here, you just go here. Here's where your ISO goes, your file name. It goes under your data here. You put your disk size, the cores that you want to use, your memory, and just hit create, and it runs. It's really slick. I like how they're doing how they did it. But this is a fresh install, so I haven't installed one. The other one that you saw was an older version older beta version of ZimaOS that I was playing around with it installed. But at any rate, so that's a difference there. The other difference now is so let's talk about RAID for a minute. As far as the Docker apps go, they're going to work exactly the same. Nothing's going to change there. They all have the same apps available to them. But where ZimaOS is trying to be a standalone server. And so one of the things that they are doing now with ZimaOS is they're doing RAID 5, and you go into here and you can say create storage, and it's going to give you the drives that are available to use to create a RAID. And I'm not going to do that right now, but if you want to do RAID 5, it's right here. Now, as far as I know, they are only going up to RAID 5, but that could change in the future because they are beefing this up, and they might even go to ZFS. Those of you that come from the Windows and don't know what ZFS is, it's just it's a RAID server software that is commercial based, and it's the best out there. Right now, in order to create this RAID, they're using ButterFS. People that are in the Linux world will know what that is, but again, it's a RAID. So it's a file system that's good at RAID, but it's mostly, from what I understand, good at mirroring RAID 5. Now, this could be different now because this was years ago when they first came out with ButterFS. Wasn't as stable with RAID 5. They may have solved that problem. but that's what they're using for RAID 5 here now. Or you can do a RAID 0, so on and so forth, but there's a stripe. RAID 1 is a mirror. Now ButterFS is really good at a mirror file system. And again, RAID 5, I'm assuming they've worked out some of the bugs they had with RAID 5. But again, they did mention that they might go ahead and implement ZFS as well. Now, the difference here with CasaOS, you can combine drives, but it uses MergerFS, and it's not really a true, it's kind of like Unraid. If you don't know what Unraid is, Unraid allows you to take any drive, any size, put data on it, and then you'll have one drive as parity. So if you have a drive that goes out, all of your data is saved. But you don't know where all that data is being stored. You don't know which drive it's being stored on. Same thing with CasaOS. You don't know which drive that's being stored on, and there is no parity drive. So if one drive goes out, you lose all the data on that drive. Now, when I say all the data on that drive, sometimes when a drive goes out, if it has not out all the way, you could probably get some of your data off of there. But so they don't have any redundancy solution for CasaOS. They could add Snapdragon to that. Snapdragon then would give them a drive with a parity on it, so it looked kind of like Unraid. What I'm really hoping that they do, and they did not answer this question for me because I was asking them, are you going to include MergerFS with Snapdragon in ZimaOS? Because to have the two options where you can do a RAID 5 or a RAID 1 or RAID 6, or you could do a MergerFS type of RAID like Unraid has, that would be the ultimate for this desktop. But they didn't answer how they're going there. I know that right now they're not offering MergerFS in CasaOS like they do in, or in ZimaOS like they do in CasaOS. It would be really nice if they would and allow it to be a parity, at least with one drive, and maybe or multiple drives if you could. But at any rate, for those of you that don't understand, if RAID 5, Unraid, those kind of concepts are new to you, then I'm sorry if that sounds a little confusing. But you can do RAID with this. I've already set one. In fact, I'm going to be doing a demo. I'm going to be doing a system on a complete install of ZimaOS and setting up RAID 5 with that. So the other difference here is shares. Now with ZimaOS, let's go into the file manager, because the file manager is different than it is in CasaOS, and you'll notice it has more functionality here because you can do backups in here. I don't know how the backups work. I haven't done any of that, but you can back up here. So you have all the same folders that you have over here. It actually has a little bit more folders, but if we go to data here, like that's over here, we have a few more folders under data because they've got a VM here, so on and so forth. So as far as if we're on data, you're pretty much the same. It has this overview function here. One thing that's kind of a nice feature here is we got this add connection, which Casa doesn't have, and we can add Google Drive, OneDrive, or Dropbox to our files here, or we can add that LAN that we did before, and I'll click this and hit connect, and then it's created that was there before. Okay, so now let's talk about shares for a minute, because there's some important things to talk about sharing here, and it's not just one topic here. This is really important. Okay, so just so you know, in future versions of this, they are going to extend your RAID capability, and what features that's going to be, I don't know, and whether they're going to go to FStab or ZFS, or they're going to offer you something similar to what Unraid does and have both options. That would be great if they did that, because this interface is so much easier to use than Unraid. Unraid you have to pay for, and Unraid it just does so much for a home user. I think it's overwhelming for a home user, where ZimaOS, I think, is really not. I mean, anything that you learn, anything that you do that's new, you're going to have a learning curve. But to me, it's so much easier than like TrueNAS, Open Medium Vol, all those other ones. So if they can just get some of these features in here, and the next feature I'm going to talk about is user shares. They really need to have a way to create users, Samba users with usernames and passwords. And it's not like you can't do it. You can do it from the command line, but most people that have never used Linux or use the command line, that's going to be a little challenging for them to set that up. And so they really need to do that. Now, the other difference is here too, is right now in CasaOS, okay, if I want to do a share here with downloads, I can just click on this and hit share. I create that share, but now there's no username or password on that share. So if you're going to use Casa or ZimaOS, you have to trust that nobody in your home is going to be able to get into your server and do anything nefarious in there. Which for a home server, maybe that's not a big deal, but most people do want their shares protected by a username and password. But that is what is new in this beta version, and I had forgotten to tell you what beta version I'm using here, and it's it's Zima 1.2.3 beta version. And what they've done new with this one, let's go to Windows just for a sec. Okay, so here we are at Windows. If I go here to networking, click on this. Now, I've already put this in here so that the server IP address is at 192.168.1.250. So if I click on that, now with ZimaOS, you get a username and password, but it's only the username and password for Casa to get into CasaOS, or on the Zima side, it's ZimaOS. So it does have that. It uses your personal password that you use to get into your ZimaOS interface. Now, this is the thing is that, but you still can't make multiple usernames and passwords unless you go to the command line. People don't know how to do that. In fact, let's talk about the command line for a minute here in Zima and CasaOS. Okay, so as far as going to the command line, in Casa you have this icon here and it'll take you to the command line. Now I'm on Linux Mint, so if I wanted to, I could go to the Linux Mint command line, but if I'm using this as a server, then this would be the easiest way to do it without SSHing into it. But one thing about Casa, it depends on the distribution you're using. SSH may not be installed, and I don't know if I have SSH installed on here, and you have to have SSH installed for me to use the terminal from here. So that's why I'm not going into it right now. But you just put your username and password in here, and now you're at the terminal. Well, there is no terminal button here on ZimaOS. And I asked them about that, and they are going to put that there in the future, but for right now, the only way to get to the command line is to go to the computer that ZimaOS is on. And normally when you install something like ZimaOS, it's not going to be at your desk. You can have it at your desk, but a lot of times it goes headless. So if you want to get to the command line, you have to have a monitor on that, or temporarily, to do anything from the command line on ZimaOS. And like I said, they are going to rectify that. I just don't know when. And when you do go to the command line, it will tell you, you just type in root, and it doesn't have a password, so it lets you into it without a password, and then they give you a command to put a password in for root. So that's one fallback on ZimaOS they really need. Now again, if you're a Linux person and you know how to SSH into your server, because you can SSH into ZimaOS if you want to, but it would just be a nice feature to have on the GUI, that you could just go straight to the terminal shell from the web browser, like you can here. And a lot of server software has a terminal shell that you just use from the web browser, where you don't have to SSH into it. It would just be a nice convenience. So that's one of the differences there. Now let me just explain one thing about the way both of these work. If I want to connect to another server, let's talk about that for a minute. In files here, I just go to location, and I'm just gonna put it on data because I'm gonna just so we have kind of the same interface here. So if I hit the location, and it's the same in both Casa and Zima, then I'll just put in the LAN storage here, and then you just type in SMB and then your colon / and your server address that you're trying to connect to. And I've already connected to it, so there it is. But if I'm going to run a Docker app, say that needs to, where I'm not going to pull the data off of my Zima server, I'm going to pull it off of a different server, this will not work. This is what I call a soft mount. And right now, as far as I know, you cannot create an FStab Samba mount with ZimaOS. And those of you, if you're a Windows user, and this may be foreign to you, if you're a Linux user, you're going to know what I'm talking about, because if you want to do anything, it's got to be a mounted folder for the Docker apps to use. It can't be. This is what I call a soft SMB mount, a hard SMB mount. In other words, let's go over here. I don't think I have one in here. No. So let's go over here to Casa. In Casa, I have RIP here. Well, RIP is a hard mount to my file server. It is a Samba FStab mount, and so this is where I rip all of my videos to, and then I go ahead and compress them with Handbrake. So even if, like, say I'm using Handbrake here, in Handbrake, when you install this, you got to tell Handbrake where your data is going to be that you are going to rip from. Now, I mounted my RIP directory in the data directory of Casa, and one thing you have to excuse here, ZimaOS uses the Casa interface. So when I say Casa or Zima, it works the same way. So it would work the same way here, because Casa puts everything in their data folder. So over here, or in Zima, I would have mounted my RIP folder over here. So then, and the reason why I did that is because when I launch Handbrake here, and I'm going to maximize this, when I go here to open a video to compress, then under storage here, my RIP directory is here along with the others. Now I could just map it directly to this RIP directory, so when I open up Handbrake, it's right in my RIP directory. But maybe there's something I'm ripping from one of these other directories, so I just left that open anyway. So then I can just go here, and I can go here and click on something I want to rip. So they did not make it really clear to me. In fact, they didn't make it clear at all that you're going to be able to do mounting in like the FStab for a server. Yeah, it's okay that I can access my server this way by creating a soft mount, but again, if your Docker app is going to need to have access to that, it can't use this Samba soft mount to do it. You've got to mount it to a folder. So anyway, that's just one of the. I'm gonna actually. I'm gonna message them again and ask them if they are going to allow us. Now, so I will admit that mounting a drive in the FStab isn't a beginner, especially a Samba one. Someone that's never used Linux before, they're not going to know how to do that. In fact, it took me a little bit to wrap my head around doing those SMB hard mounts. But anyway, and I know they're just trying to make this as easy as possible, and it's not that big a deal if you're going to use ZimaOS as your file server, and everything that you're going to access for your data and everything is in the ZimaOS server. Then it's fine. But it's when you have a Docker image that needs to go beyond the ZimaOS server is where that's going to be a little bit of an issue. If you can't do a hard mount on an SMB share or drive folder, whatever you want to say. But anyway, that being said, I'm really excited. Let me tell you, if they can just get down just those few things, being able to create user names and passwords, more than just the username for ZimaOS, but multiple username and passwords to have access to different files and folders. And right now you can do RAID with ZimaOS the way it is. Do you use ZimaOS or not, even though it's in beta? Now, let me just tell you, compared to what I started using with 10 plus years ago, this interface is the easiest interface. You don't even necessarily have to understand Docker apps if you're going to run, say, Jellyfin or Plex, and maybe some of the other built-in applications in Docker applications. Now, I would recommend trying to learn a little bit about Docker if you use this, but it is so easy to use and set up that, and where it supports RAID as well. Now, because it is beta, I would definitely have backups of my media that I put on here for movies, and back up the Docker apps on here as well. But man, what this interface! I'm really excited about ZimaOS. If they can just do those few things that I mentioned, this thing is just great. What a great all-in-one server for the home user, and a business as well. To be honest, if they want to run Docker app server, this thing is great. So I hope that was helpful. This is TJ with Tech Made Easy. Have a great day. Thanks.
Now that was easy peasy.